Welcome back. I went shopping today in order to purchase something to make a video on. Really, I'm not even joking. And I came across this Sony Boombox. This is a CFD S33. I bought it at Savers for $2.99. I actually have been looking for a good portable stereo for work, and this is one. So I figured I should make a video on how to recondition one of these stereos and make it new again. But let's go ahead and, for the sake of this video, let's test it out and make sure it works. So when selecting a portable stereo from a thrift shop, there's a couple of things you're going to want to check for. Depending on how crazy or OCD you are with condition and functionality, some people have less strict standards. My standards are pretty high because I am not in any rush to get something that I don't need at the moment. So, a couple of things you want to look out for even before you even plug it in. Okay, number one, does it have a battery door? Yes. Number two, when you open the battery door, is there any corrosion? Are there batteries left in it, and have they been left in long enough to start leaking? No. There are no signs of corrosion on any of the terminals at all. Okay, sweet. Alright, we'll leave that off for now. If it doesn't have a power cord, that's okay, because the standard radio power cords are still in use today on many devices. This one still has the original one. But it should look like that. And some of them are oval shaped with a kind of a notch in the middle. That's okay too. Both of these are easy to come across. Alright, now that we've confirmed that, let's take a look at anything else that might be a problem. If it has metal grills, and some people are more picky than others, but if it has metal grills, are they dented in any way or scratched? Because you can fix dents and scratches by disassembling the entire radio. If they're cloth, are they torn? Are they ripped? These are beautiful. One thing that I noticed about this radio is it is really dirty, but we're going to fix that. Then you get into, oh yes, rod antenna. Is it included? Is it missing? Is it bent? Is it missing sections? I lucked out here. The rod antenna is in mint condition and it fully extends. Sweet. No bending at all. It did have a slight kink around the base, but I was able to straighten it out in the store just by giving it a reverse bend a little bit. But that took care of that problem pretty quickly. Alright, let's plug it in. Now this is something that I don't believe my local Goodwill has that ability, but Savers does, where you can actually plug in electronics before buying them. So find yourself a cassette tape and a CD and go to town. Make sure the cassette tape is nothing you care about. This is a tape, I don't even know what's on this tape, but we're going to find out. So we're going to test the cassette player. Now if you don't have a cassette handy, you can actually do some quick preliminary tests to make sure the cassette deck is functional. If it's not an auto reverse, it's a little easier to do this, but actually it doesn't matter either way. Full logic controls, which are the electronic push button ones, were really nice when they were new, but as they get older they tend to fail. So it's nice to find one with real buttons that you can press, and they're not full logic control is the term you'll often see written on the front. So let's hit play and make sure that the take-up reel and the capstan are spinning happily, and they are. Then we're going to press rewind, and the other one spins. Now you'll notice that they stop like that. This is a function of auto stop. If there's no tape in the unit, it will do that. This is normal behavior. So don't worry about that. You won't be able to press the record button, so don't worry about that right now either. Fast forward works. Press play, Press pause. You can see the pinch roller stops as it should. Great. Okay, now let's put in a tape. We're going to press play. It works. That's pretty cool. Turn the volume up. Press rewind. It's rewinding. And it stops. Fast forward. Good. Then we're going to make sure that the tape stops in the play position as well. It's got Jethro Tull on it. Turn that down so I don't hit a copyright violation. We're going to let it play and do its thing, or we'll just fast forward. And it stops. Why is that important? If it doesn't stop on its own, and it is an auto stop deck, then you have a slight fixable, hopefully, problem. There are two things that can cause this. A mechanical failure in the mechanism where the levers and moving pulleys and all that nonsense is damaged. If it doesn't stop and it is an auto stop deck, you may have slipping belts. You may have worn belts. Your pinch roller might be worn out. There are a lot of little age-related issues that can cause that. Not all cassette decks are auto stop, but most of them will stop in fast forward and play positions. They may not stop in the rewind position. That is one thing you want to make sure you are. So in this case, it is a full auto stop. It is not advertised. Usually that feature is advertised, but it's not. Okay, moving on. If it has analog controls, which most of them do, analog volume, meaning it has a knob that you turn, or tone controls, you want to make sure that they're not scratchy. This unit, one of the reasons I bought this unit is that it has digital volume controls and tone controls, so I don't have to worry about worn out potentiometers, and in the case of digital mechanical tuning and digital mechanical volume, it doesn't have an encoder. An encoder is an electronic sensor that converts rotational movement into digital pulses that it can sense whether the volume is going up or down, or you're tuning it up or down. Not to get too involved in that. But if you have rotating knobs or slides, you want to make sure that they're not worn out or dirty. If they are dirty, they can be cleaned. I suggest you watch the video I put up where I restored a Sony Mega Watchman. I think I went over how to clean mechanical sliders. It's actually pretty easy. You can do it with Q-tips and common things like alcohol, which most people have in their homes. Rubbing alcohol works really well. Or tuner cleaner, which you can buy in the can. Deoxit makes a nice tuning knob or tuning and potentiometer cleaning solution. Okay, moving on. If it has digital volume controls, usually they don't malfunction. I did mention encoders earlier, digital encoders. Sometimes they can fail. I know that Iowa stereos are known for it. I've had a few myself that had that problem. Okay, CD player. Usually, CD players can break. They can stop working, but it's not all that common. I mean, I've dragged many old stereos into this house over the years, and usually CD players, I don't usually have problems with them. Usually I say usually because there was that one time I did have a problem, and it was actually caused not by a faulty laser disc spindle or anything like that. The problems are caused by the mechanism that loads and ejects the discs. But in a pop-top unit like this, you won't have that problem. So let's pop in this Def Leppard CD and see what happens. Okay, now this is something you can typically do in the store before you buy it, and we're going to test the CD player by pressing Function to CD and hit play. This one also has Mega Bass. That works. This one also has some nice features like a wake-up alarm, a sleep alarm, or sleep timer. It has, it actually has a preset equalizer, and you hit that by pressing the sound button. Now, let's talk a little bit about this particular unit. So this CD player was manufactured in 1997. I was in 7th or 8th grade at the time. I was in middle school. In the summer of 1997, roughly when this unit was made, it was made in August, so exactly 20 years ago, ironically. I remember the summer of 97, that was when Smash Mouth released their Walking on the Sun single, which was part of the Fush You Mang album, and I had to have it. Every middle school kid did. So, CD player works, cassette player works. We know the tuner works. I'm not going to bother testing that right now. I did test it earlier. So, what do we do now? Well, if we were just, you know, lazy, we could just clean it up, make it look nice. But that's not how I do things. We're going to do a complete disassembly, soup to nuts. We're going to tear this thing apart. So, let's do it. This is where we get into the meat and potatoes of a typical video that I make. I might speed up part of this. So, I'm going to try to explain first what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to probably zip through it by increasing the video speed because this is going to be long. I like to put some towels down to protect not only what I'm working on, but also the countertop. And some of you had been complaining in previous videos about my lighting in my house, and you know what? I actually did something to help you see what I'm doing. Let's take a look real quick. Fortunately, I have this. Woo! This is the longest Phillips head screwdriver I could find. And I bought this at Lowe's, actually. You can buy these at Harbor Freight as well, and they aren't expensive. We're going to use this to get these nice, deep, recessed screws out. Now, alright guys, I'm glad this happened. Alright. We took all obvious screws out, right? Everything that seemed pretty obvious. I'm looking, I'm trying to pull the speaker grills off, thinking, well, maybe they're hidden behind the speaker grills. There's one screw, and the only way to get to it is to close the CD player and the cassette door, and you look straight in. You see this little arrow here? This one right here? It's actually pointing to a screw that's way the hell in the front. There we go. That screw is pretty well hidden, but it's there. We gotta get it out. And that, my friends, is the sticky wicket. There it is. And we're good to go. Well, that threw me for a loop, didn't it? Now, I should be able to pull this unit apart. Yeah, just like that. Just like butter. Just like butter. Alright. Okay, now this is where you want to be really careful. Look for, yeah, look for look for cables. Now what I like about these Sony stereos is that everything is kind of plugged together. There's not a lot of soldering. Yes, sometimes you actually need to solder. Not this time. I just unplug my speakers and the whole front end just comes off in one piece. Look at that. So let's take a look at the componentry for those of you who aren't familiar. So let's take a look at the front first. Now, these two devices here, as I hope you know, are speakers. In the middle we have our control panel. Now every stereo is built differently, even those from the same manufacturers. So we've got our control circuitry there, and we have the other side of our bass port, which allows for better bass response or something like that. This right here, this is our power supply. This converts AC 120 volts or 240, depending on where you live, down to about 6 volts. So this is going to, this is part of a whole assembly which also contains a switchboard which switches it from battery to AC and back and forth as needed. And so there's our battery connectors there. It goes into this board which automatically switches power from one source to the other. Looks like it switches it to a couple of different voltages because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different wires coming out of it. I later determined that the 4 conductors are for, well, 2 of them are for primary power to power the radio's functions. The other 2 are a reduced voltage which retains memory settings and the time and everything else. The other 2, lower voltage, is active when the batteries are installed and the AC is disconnected. So in order to retain memory, you need to have batteries installed. CD player control system, as well as our circuitry needed for the cassette player and recorder, and it also contains our display. So let's dig deep. I'm going to dig deeper. Deeper and deeper and deeper. Alright, looks like for this one, this board just slides right out. And the top is going to just pop off, just like that. Oh, that was nice and easy. Okay, we've got a little switch here. This is a micro switch. This is how it tells that the CD door is closed. Looks like I took half the, this was not expected, but it happened. We've got the, the entire rack of control buttons off of the cassette player. Let's got to make sure that these go back in the right order. Why did we take it apart? Well, we want to clean everything as thoroughly as possible. So we want to try to get everything apart. This is our record button. This is our play button. I want to keep these in the right order. This is an assembly that is unique to this model, probably to other Sony products as well. Did not expect this to pop out like that, just in full disclosure. While we have the unit apart, we're going to check the cassette player for worn belts. We're going to clean the heads externally. We're going to lubricate the mechanism and make it new again. We're also going to be able to wash this entire top shelf, and this is going to be washed in the sink. We're going to soak it in some soapy hot water. I'm going to unplug everything from this board. Now don't be too nervous about that because most of this stuff only plugs in one way. So we're going to unplug the CD player. And we're going to be able to probably pull that clean out. Just take the whole thing right out. Now that goes to the tuner. Here's the unplug the CD player there, and then there's a ribbon cable. Be careful with these ribbon cables, they can tear, and when they do, they have to be replaced, and good luck finding new ones. Here's the CD player mechanism. You see how it rides on these nice thick cushions? You don't see that anymore. You know, they're just not built like that anymore. And they're not degrading, they're not crumbling, which is often what happens to old rubber parts. But no, these are nice and supple. We're going to put that aside. Okay. Next we're going to unplug the cassette deck. It's just a couple of plugs here. Oh, there's a cable that got caught up in there. There we go, we'll get that out. I found my battery. I knew I would. It's not one that I can easily replace though, which bothers me. One of the things with digital tuners is there's often a memory involved, and if I can't preserve that those memory settings, it kind of becomes annoying. I got the board all unplugged. Here's that battery I was talking about, right there. And that looks like it might be a rechargeable. I can't really tell. But it's not leaking. That's one thing you want to watch out for. It's not leaking. But that should probably be replaced. Yeah. I'm going to say probably replace that with a new one. It is 20 years old. It's a little stack of coin cells is what it is. So, alright. So here's the board in all its glory. Alright, put that aside. That battery should probably be changed. Now we're going to remove the cassette mechanism. And we're gonna just give it a couple of sprays with some compressed air, clean it up, make it good again. Screws aside. It's held in by 3 screws. Just pull it away. Looks like the motor cable is. Here we go. So here's our cassette. Now this is where, if we were having issues with the auto stop, we'd be wanting to check out these belts here, make sure they're supple, or not supple, make sure they're not terribly cracked and crazed and gummy. Sometimes they get gummy. I'm going to keep these belts. I have new belts that could go in it, but they're not as good. One thing you got to know about these older units is the belts are usually, if it's from a reputable manufacturer like Sony and it's over 20 years old, the belts were of very high quality. And the ones that you get today are made within the past 10 years often have really cheap belts that don't hold up over time. They tend to get gummy and soft, and then they slip. Here's a good opportunity to clean the head, the record head, as well as the record erase head and the capstan and pinch roller. And you can see there's a lot of gunk. You can see that. That brown stuff on this post here, that's our capstan and pinch roller assembly, and you can see there's a lot of gunk in there, and that has to be cleaned off. It is just absolutely, it cannot be there. The belt appears to be in really good shape. I am not even the least bit concerned about that. So that's good to know. Yep. One way to test the belt is to put your thumb on the motor pulley and kind of rotate this flywheel here. You can feel a lot of resistance. In fact, there's a lot of resistance there. That's what you want. Okay. Let's take a look deeper. Now, you can see this mechanism has a little bit of chintziness to it. Can you tell? All right, I'm going to point it out to you. See this spring right here, this thing right here, this little. Watch when I press the stop button. You can see how it flexes. Well, this is a plastic spring. As plastic ages, it gets brittle. It dries out. It goes bad. Something like this is a high risk for failure. Over time, that will begin to snap. It seems to be pretty good now. But give it another 10 years, it'll probably snap. And there's a lot of those in this mechanism. There's actually quite a few. They're used in the pause control. Let's see if I can zoom in on that. You see the little, there you go, that little thing that looks like a uvula? Yeah, that's not good. This is a chintzy mechanism. It's something I would expect from mid-90s Sony. I think this would be, yeah, definitely not of the highest caliber. Now I have some nice grease and lubrication. We can use the proper kind. We're going to use that to re-lubricate a lot of these mechanisms. Let's put that aside for now. Okay, we've got to remove everything electronic from this this case. Everything has got to come out. These little spacers here, we're going to put those aside. We're going to not lose those. All right. Those are used in the CD mechanism. Should be one other one. I think it got misplaced. I think I already may have lost one. No, maybe not. I think there were only two in the front, not in the back. They're little, what they are, they're little shims. So we're going to remove this board here, which contains, now this board is often, you're going to find a little micro switch on the cassette mechanism. In this unit, it's actually mounted to the chassis. Sometimes they're mounted directly to the board. It depends on who makes it and when. This is a micro switch that's used to switch it from record to play mode. That's what this does. Got a lot of wires going in and out of it, but that's what it does. We're going to put that aside. Okay, now we're getting in there. Now the handle is removable. Now that we have it apart, we can slide the handle out just like that. Your mileage may vary depending on what you're working on, but let's take this. Now, so one of the concerns I have right now is that little capacitor on the board. I may have to source one out. It's not a capacitor. It's listed as a capacitor, but it is a battery, and usually they go bad. So we're gonna have to probably have to put this project on hold during reassembly to get another one of those. Now here we have our tuning board. This contains a bunch of ICs, 2 to be exact. It is actually called the tuner. Yes. Alright. I'm not exactly sure how the divide is between the, on these digital tuners, or what circuitry is on what board. I just know what that happens to be. Okay. Now we're going to get the power supply out. Now this is where things are going to get a little complicated. Unless I can remove the battery terminals with ease. Which looks like it might be doable. This is where a soldering iron is usually necessary. In this case, I don't think it will be. But what we've got to do is we've got to remove the battery terminals so they can come out with this board, the power supply board. So, on a lot of these units, the battery terminals are actually held in with melted in place tabs. Don't think that'll be a problem here. I think we'll be able to get it. Yeah, it's definitely glued in. And this is how the power supply comes out. We're going to leave this screw in place since it holds this little ground strap. Or, I'm sorry, this is a wire holder. This is our power supply board. Yeah. It's all there in one assembly. Let's put that aside too. Okay. Now we'll just dump all these screws out. Now we're ready to get dirty, or clean. Alright. Okay. This came apart relatively easily. When we clean this unit, we're going to have to take some cautionary steps around these foam pads. Now this is another thing you want to look out for. On an older unit like this, there's going to be some foam. It's for sound deadening. And if it springs back when you press on it, it's good. If it doesn't spring back and you press it down and it stays that way like memory foam, trust me, it's not memory foam. It's basically turned to mush. In which case, you're going to want to remove it. Just take it out. Don't even waste your time. Alright. Okay, well that concludes this step. Let's Oh, wait, we're not done. We still need to take the control panel apart, which we will now do. So we're going to take the control panel completely apart. We're going to remove both speakers and the control board and the buttons. We're going to leave no stone unturned. We're also going to remove the speaker grills. Now, because this is a pretty well-made stereo, we can do that without any permanent damage. I like it. They're actually screwed in place. They're going to get washed separately. Don't worry. It'll happen for them. They're going to get the attention they deserve. Yes. Yes. Alright. We're going to make this thing brand new again. If you're going to be taking stereos apart like this, and you're going to do it on a regular basis, it's a good idea to learn how to solder. And the fortunate thing is, when you break wires off of boards on old stereos like these, now this one has push connectors on everything. You're not always so lucky. But when you have to remove a connector or remove a wire from a board, a basic soldering kit will get you going, and they're not hard to use. They're not hard to learn how to use. I was 9 years old when I learned how to solder. I wasn't doing like board level stuff back then, but I could solder stuff together if I needed to. And so we're going to take a look at these speakers. All right, here's our first solder opportunity. There is a wire going from here. Let me show you what I'm doing here. There is a wire that goes from this speaker, from this negative post here, to this board. Yeah, didn't expect that. Well, that's got to come off. I'm not gonna, you know what, I'm not gonna do that because I can take this board out at the same time. And let's take a look at these speakers are good and clean, so I don't have to clean those off. They're nice. That's one of the benefits of a cloth speaker grill. But this would be a good opportunity to solder this wire, desolder this wire, which would just involve melting the solder, pulling the wire off, and then putting it back on later. I don't know what the hell I'm doing at the time. But I make stuff up as I go along, and I try to stick to projects that are simple, that anybody can do. So let's take a look here. We've got some dust buildup behind the speakers. Even though it's not visible, I'm still going to do something about it. I'm also going to clean up this display here. And I think there's one on the top. Yeah, there's a window on the cassette door. We're going to clean these up too. Make them look new again, and I'll show you how to do that. It's real easy. Using motorcycle windshield polish. Works great. Stay tuned. Also, I cover this in a lot of my videos. You can usually tell roughly how old something is by the date stamp. So, this stamp here, now these are on almost every piece of molded plastic ever made within the past 30 years. These are mold marks. There's a term for them. I can't think of what it is, but these are used to determine when the mold that made this piece was produced. And it says 97, 98, 99. There's your year, and then there's a month, 1 through 12, and a grid line here. And this was made in June of 97, and we know the radio itself was made in August of 97. So that makes sense. That checks out right. And almost every piece of plastic molded ever has that. Another little tidbit, you could recover these grills by taking them off like this, and you could actually replace the covering, the fabric covering, if you were so inclined. I don't have to do that. But most fabric shops actually sell this material. It's a sheer fabric used for speaker grills, and it's usually fairly reasonably priced, and you could recover these if you wanted to. These are in good condition. I have no need to do that. Alright, now we're going to go into the second phase. We're going to clean, clean, clean. Alright, off we go. first thing I want to do is I want to clean this. Now, there's a couple of chemicals that I use to clean things with. Some are more effective than others. Sometimes I go straight to the dishwasher. In this case, I'm going to see how far we can go with just standard old, I don't know, let's see. I use Windex, rubbing alcohol, and dish detergent. Those are the three things I usually use. Also, I've been known to use a degreaser. Let's go ahead and go for the degreaser. This is dollar store orange degreaser. This stuff works pretty well at cleaning almost anything. I often use this for when I'm going to paint something. It works pretty well. Now this is going to damage some of the stickers and labels. No matter what I use, it's looking good. This is coming out really nicely. And just by using the degreaser. Degreaser removes things like oils, cooking grease, cigarette tar. Those things will come right off the degreaser. Window cleaner will work pretty well, but it's not as strong in dealing with things like that. Now, I didn't suspect this was owned by a cigarette smoker, and I don't have any evidence to suggest it was. I just went straight to the degreaser because it has been effective for me over the years. Okay, I'm going to just kind of shake it out. And we're going to let it dry overnight. I'm going to dry it off with a towel, and I'm going to let it sit overnight to completely dry before reassembly. Now let's move on to, let's do the front. We're going to clean the top of the unit. This is the last of our cleaning efforts, and then we're going to start the reassembly process. It is 12 o'clock, 12:30 in fact. I'm going to call it a night pretty soon. And I want to get this finished. You can see that, yeah, there's definitely some grime on here that needs to be washed away. So let's get that on. Okay. Before I go in for the night, I'm going to start on this cassette deck. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use compressed air, and I'm going to clean off just dust off what I can. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing to the CD player mechanism. Now we're going to clean the head. I'm going to use another clean spot of this rag. And I saw some deposits on the head. Now there's two heads. There's one for recording and one for erasing. The erase head is really just a magnet. On higher end decks, this is their erase head. On higher end units, that is actually electrified. It's an electromagnet. But this being a cheap late 90s cassette deck, not going to have all those fancy features. Now the head polished up, or it's cleaned up, looks pretty good. I'm going to use the clean side of this. Normally I'd be using a Q-tip, but I figured I'd try something new. Seems to be working okay. And I'm going to do the same thing to the erase head. Make sure I've got a rubbing alcohol soaked section. I'm going to clean that up. Now the erase head will only engage with the tape when the record mode is selected. When this foot is pressed down, it unlocks the record, and you can see that that head drops down and erases. Without that, it can't drop down to hit the head, to hit the tape. Just so you know how that works. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start lubricating things with the appropriate grease. Let me go get that. The grease that I use is M-Coat EM30L. This is made by 3M, I believe. And we're going to apply it to a Q-tip, and we're going to just dab it wherever stuff slides. Usually where there was grease, there should be new grease. Another word about greases. Now you might see some YouTubers, and I'll admit I was guilty of this too, using materials like, or chemicals like Vaseline to lubricate transport mechanisms. Now this may seem offhand to be a good idea. It's cheap. Everybody has Vaseline in their house almost. And why not? What could possibly go wrong? Well, the reality is everything. Vaseline is petroleum based. The problem with that is so isn't the plastic used to make these mechanisms. So, kind of like how paint thinner can adversely affect and destroy painted surfaces, Vaseline, being petroleum based, can leach petroleum out of the plastic and cause it to crack and fail and do horrible, nasty things. That is a real problem, and that also applies to automotive greases, bicycle bearing greases. They should never be used with these types of plastics because it will degrade them, destroy them. Now, I had recently cleaned a CD lens on a CD player. Actually, it was the one in my home entertainment system. And there was a very visible difference between before and after. So, in this case, I don't expect there to be, because this doesn't look that bad. It shines. If you look at the lens, it should look like a mirror. This one is not too bad. But we're going to take some rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip, and we're going to just lightly clean it. You don't want to apply any pressure because we could throw it out of alignment. We could cause damage to the suspension system. We're just going to lightly buff it, just like that. That actually is very much different. It is a lot cleaner than it was. It won't show up on camera though, but there is a very noticeable difference. Now, normally this won't be a problem. In fact, the CD lens can be dirty and it will work just fine. The only time you really ever have to worry about that lens is if there's a problem, honestly. And by that point, it's just too fogged up. But the thing is, most of these are usually in between working and not working. You know, it'll work until it's too fogged up, and then it won't work. It's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, now it's beautiful. Look at that, beautiful. That was actually dirty. I was surprised about that. Didn't expect it to be so bad. But anyway, what do those CD lens cleaners do? The ones you put in and it press play and it says cleaning 3D now. What do they really do? Well, nothing. They usually brush the surface of the lens with either a little piece of microfiber cloth, or I've actually seen some with actual bristles on them. Yuck. They don't work. Don't use them. There's just no... I've never found that they ever worked. If I've ever had a problem with a CD player not working, it's because the lens is actually filmed up, not covered in dust. So there you go. Save yourself a few bucks. Don't buy that crap. Alright. We're getting in there. We're getting somewhere. I think we're pretty much done here. I did notice that there is a little bit of that off-colorness to the... I'm gonna bleach the top, and we're going to see how that comes out. But I'm not going to show you. We're going to call it a night. Till then. And I'm proud to now show you and reveal the completed 1997 Sony Boombox. Now, it took 4 hours of hard labor to get this thing back to its original condition, but I'm proud to say I succeeded. And it is absolutely fantastically functional. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look. Look at that. Ooh. So, I mean, really, it's as new. I mean, it couldn't be better. It couldn't be in any better condition at this point. I got the original sheen back. I mean, it looks brand new. Inside and out. Everything works perfectly. The cassette deck, the CD player, the tuner, everything works perfectly on this unit. I am blown away by how well... I mean, it was designed and built well enough to have undergone this procedure without any damage without any loss of functionality. So, let's take a quick walkthrough on some features that I found that it has. Now, of course, it has a built-in digital clock, which displays the time whether it's powered on or off. As such, it does not have a hard power switch. It is a soft powered device. All power function is controlled through logic circuitry on the main board. It does not have a built-in battery backup for the clock, but what it does have is a supercapacitor, or a very high capacity capacitor, which will allow it to display the time even when the power is pulled, for approximately, when it was new, about 60 minutes. Being 20 years old, it doesn't really go that long anymore. But it will go for several minutes, at least while you change the batteries. When batteries are installed, as I later found out, the batteries will provide a small amount of power to the main board to keep the memory function alive and to keep the clock running until the batteries run down. I found a separate power lead going from the power supply to the main board to provide a lower voltage source for that purpose. And the power supply handles switching it over from battery power to battery backup to main power backup, or AC backup. Anyway, moving along. It has a built-in digital tuner, obviously, which functions fantastically. Digital preset. I forget how many presets it actually offers, but there's many. I believe if I press this button here, if I hold it down, I think. Yeah, no, that's not what I want. But yeah, there's like probably 10 or so presets built in. It does offer an infrared remote. I did find one on eBay for about $8, which I will be ordering shortly. The infrared remote allows you to control the stereo power function, tuning, audio settings, volume and equalizer settings, bass boost, CD, everything but the cassette player can be controlled with the remote, which is pretty typical for these types of units. Only the higher end models had full logic controls on the cassette deck, which would allow you to control it from a distance. The CD player and the cassette deck, as most better quality units were built, are linked. So if I were to press the record button while in CD mode, it will automatically start the CD player. But what it does is it provides for a leader delay. So the leader on a cassette is about a couple seconds long, and it will automatically pause the playback feature until that leader is run through. So in any time now it'll start playing. There it goes. Now it's recording from the CD deck. And the album that is actually playing right now is exactly the same age as the unit. This is Smash Mouth's Fush Yu Mang, which was recorded and released, or it was released in the summer of 1997, which was exactly 20 years ago, and this unit was manufactured 20 years ago this month, in the summer of 97. So we're now recording off the CD, and I did check all functionality, and it is working fantastically. I had some concerns originally where it wasn't recording over previously recorded tracks or music. I thought the problem was the erase head not doing its job. Maybe it had lost magnetism. But after changing the tape to a different tape that had already been recorded on, I found that to be not an issue at all. It is working exactly as it's supposed to. So what else can I tell you about it? Yes, it does not record, it will not record your voice. There is no microphone at all on this unit. And thinking back, I believe I had a friend who had this exact same radio back in the 90s. I'm trying to think, I think it might have been my cousin who had this exact same radio way back in the old days. I myself, in December of '94, my parents got me a Sanyo dual cassette CD AM/FM tuner. So what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to stop the CD player from playing when the tape ends, but I guess that doesn't work. But anyway, I thought it did. I guess it doesn't. I could be wrong. One of the more annoying features that I found is that usually a CD can be recorded on both sides of a cassette, of a 90-minute cassette. But what it does not do is it does not pause the playback of the CD when the tape ends. It doesn't seem to have that ability. So if you're trying to record an entire CD onto a cassette, it's best that you monitor it and keep an eye on what you're recording. So let's take a look at the AM/FM tuner. Oops. Power on, radio.
Here, what we've seen the last couple of races here is the restarts.
Absolutely, restarts are key to success here. We've seen Carl Larson win the last 2 times here, and he simply nailed the late race restart. And we've also seen adversity. Chase Elliott has had the best car.
Now, let's say you have some static.
3 last races, and he's finished.
It has the ability to switch to a monaural audio,
right, spun his tires,
cleans it up a little bit.
Didn't work out for him. So restart
pretty nice.
the top groove is very, very important. And a lot of times you'll see spotters calling cars off pit road to put yourself to be in the top groove on a restart. So at Michigan, that's very important. Another Joe for me is weather. All along through the cloud, and when the sun is out, track is hot, grip down, cars are loose. Back into the car, sliding around through the corners. We've seen Jimmy Johnson get out of the group today. We've seen the car go to a back.
Presets it has up to. It has 10 presets. I switched it. And if I press any of these buttons down here, it switches to CD automatically. Another feature it has is, I think I mentioned this earlier, is it has a preset equalizer. And let's see how many it has. Where is the equalizer button? Sound, rock, vocal, live, pop, and off. So it has that. A lot of these older systems had that built in. Some newer ones actually might even. In terms of build quality, though, this does not compare to anything made today. It is infinitely better. But interestingly enough, in 1997, it was considered, of mediocre quality. I mean, it was nothing special. I mean, I did show you in the cassette deck, there's a lot of things in the cassette deck, a lot of plastic springs, and like the heads aren't adjustable, and, So it's not a high-end cassette deck, but it has stood the test of time. And based on the amount of buildup that I found on the rollers, the cassette deck had been used with regularity. So, you can't deny that it was poorly built. I mean, it was, but it has survived. I mean, even the belts were still in mint condition. There was no need to change the belts in this unit. I think what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to put some batteries in it, and I'm going to bring it to work, which is why I bought it. I'm going to use this when I'm working, at my job, and, and that's pretty much what I'm going to do with it. So, there it is, the CFD S33. And I will buy a remote for it. They're cheap enough and plentiful. Once you isolate which model remote works with it, which I've done, But as soon as I unplug the main power, the clock continues to run unless I hit the power button. And then it discharges instantly discharges. Because now this is another thing. What I found here, see, it's completely dead now. If you hit the power button with no power and no battery in there, it actually tries to turn itself on, which instantly drains the capacitor, because that capacitor continues to run the logic circuit as if nothing was wrong, as if it had full power, so it doesn't know that there's no power source, so it tries to turn on, and as soon as it does, loses all the settings. So that's one thing I want to kind of play with that and see how long it will really go. But to set the clock, you just press the clock button and then set, what time is it? 2:40 p.m. So 2:40 p.m. And that capacitor should pretty much charge instantly. I have a Sony Dream Machine alarm clock that actually works the same way. It's actually much older than this, by almost 7 years. So, but if I pull the power right now, the clock continues to run. So I'm going to let it sit for a little while and see how long it holds it. Alright. Another question that people are going to want the answer to. Will it play burned CDs? Now, a lot of the newer CD players don't really have a problem with these. Some really old ones do. It seems to be pretty random. Like, I had a CD player that was made in 1986 that played these just fine. But I've had some made sometime in the early 90s that did not. But this one does. I will now demonstrate for you. Let's play track 2. There's 13 tracks in all. Let's play track 2. That was, I believe, Adavacron by, is it, I can't think of the name of the guy, but anyway, that actually did work. So it does play burned CDs, it does play cassettes, it records, it does everything, but it will not record your voice because it has no microphone. Kind of an odd configuration, but hey, you know, it does everything else. And it has a remote, or will, in a little while. So, thank you for watching. I hope this lengthy video has been somewhat entertaining for at least one or two of my viewers. Thanks a lot.